Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Cycle Breakers Show. We are super excited to bring you this episode, which is going to be talking about today how your nervous system is your business strategy. My name is Sid Clevenger. I'm one of the original Cycle Breakers, together with my beautiful wife here, Tiffany Toombs
Hello,
Clevenger.
everyone.
And today we're going to be talking about basically the nervous system, but how it's so important when it comes to not only our business, me and Tiffany's business, but just business in general with all the clients that we work with, and really break down the science about what this is, and ultimately the difference between regulated, people who have regulated nervous systems versus people who don't, or entrepreneurs and their regulated nervous systems versus ones who don't. So super excited to be here today, and really to kind of kick this off. I think it's important to talk about kind of how I grew up. But, before me and Tiffany kind of got into business together, and how I was kind of taught about this thing we've all heard around the hustle and grind, not only of entrepreneurship, but of life. And, just feeling like we always had to get up every day, and everything was always a hustle, and everything was always just grind, grind, grind. You can do it. And how that really kind of led me down this road of, you know, just very unhappy and very, not definitely not regulated, but very just unhappy and lost most of the time, and feeling like I was never good enough most of the time. So, Tiff, what would you say, really, when it comes to the hustle and grind culture, how would you say that that creates dysregulation, and ultimately, how does that hurt, people who are looking to grow, and ultimately entrepreneurships who are looking to increase or entrepreneurs or people in general looking to increase their income?
So the hustle and grind, like society that we live in, really perpetuates not taking rest, right? I don't know about you, but self-care days or self-care time was seen as selfish when I was growing up.
Yeah.
Mental health days were not a thing, right? And I grew up hearing things like, if you're not up and working by 7, you've wasted half the day. And being lazy was like one of the worst things that you could be called. And so what this does is it perpetuates this belief and this pattern of behavior where we always have to be working, where we always have to be doing something, where our worth, our worthiness is tied back to our productivity. And so the more productive you are, the better of a person you are, quote unquote, right?
Yeah.
But what this does is it means that it really pushes us towards burnout. It pushes us towards dysregulation because now we can't slow down. We can't take some time off. We can't just rest and relax, right? I remember we would go on vacations or camping trips, and still my dad couldn't just like sit and be. And so then
Mhm.
when I started, when I got old enough to go on vacations alone, it was like, well, I always had to be doing something. I couldn't just sit by the pool and read or sit on the beach and chill out. I had to like be doing something. So I'd plan like all of these events, but then I was always exhausted. And so that just keeps us in this cycle of dysregulation.
Yeah, I know. Before I met you, it was all, I kind of grew up the same way, where it was like, your time and, your constant, like, obviously, like, the more actions you take, and ultimately the more stress you get put in, right? The more opportunity that you would have. And that was kind of how I grew up as well, right? But not understanding kind of like how to work harder instead of working smarter. And when I figured out that, working harder always didn't end up meaning making more money, especially when you're working harder on the wrong stuff. It, it impacted me. Then I met you, and kind of one of the things I know you and I have done since we've been together now, going on 7 years, was, we're really big at going outside. We're really big at taking walks. We're really big at slowing down and letting like the natural, things around us, just like, where we live now in the Smoky Mountains, being around the trees and the air, and just nature in general, like letting that kind of like do its work. And I guess what would you say, I guess when it comes to the science of things of this, like before we kind of go into nervous system and business, maybe talk a little bit about the science of this, and kind of, I know they have this thing called the vagus nerve and fight, flight, freeze, fawn, and all of that, but like when it comes to the science of this, what are those things that are happening, and ultimately how is that affecting making more money, increasing income, and ultimately just overall decision making, as an entrepreneur or someone who's looking to grow.
Yeah. So the vagus nerve is a nerve that starts in our brain and it
Mhm.
innervates all of the most important organs in our body. It connects with our heart, it connects with our gut, it connects with, the most important organs. So there are two branches of the vagus nerve. Think of the vagus nerve like the gearbox in your car, right? And so we have two main nervous system branches, the sympathetic nervous system, which is our survival mode, and then we have our parasympathetic nervous system, which is our like rest digest. So when the sympathetic nervous system is activated, we go into survival mode, and there's four states. There's fight, flight, freeze, fawn. And we go in that order. So first we hit fight. This is like an opportunity for us to confront whatever the threat on our life is and try to eliminate it. If that doesn't get rid of the stressor or the threat, then we go into flight. Now we're running away, right? So we run into a bear while hiking. The first thing that we're taught to do is like get big, right? Like, bah, make a lot of noise, get big. That's fight. And then to slowly start to back away. That's the flight. That's the running away. And then there's the freeze and fawn. Freeze is play dead, and fawn is another form of play dead, but in people terms, it's like, I'm fine, everything's fine. Look, I'm good. I'm super stressed. I'm burnt out. I have all these chronic health issues, but I'm good, right? Like put on the happy face
What
and the
is
smile.
what is this?
That's my happy fawn face.
Oh boy.
So, so how does that impact our ability to make money and whatnot? Now, if you are attempting to focus, so a lot of people, and I know this is going to trigger some people, but I'm going to say it anyways. A lot of people think they have ADHD. What they have is a dysregulated nervous system. We know that in America alone, ADHD is at least 20% over slash misprescribed, right? Misdiagnosed. There's also a lot of people who have never been to the doctor, but they're like, oh, well, I can't focus and I'm easily distracted. So therefore I have ADHD. So there's a whole lot of people walking around who say they have ADHD. They don't have ADHD. Then, if you do have ADHD, because we also have clients who are neurodivergent and who have ADHD, your symptoms are profoundly worse with a dysregulated nervous system. So we have some clients who were able to come off of their medication for ADHD just by regulating their nervous system, right? So it
Yeah.
is going to kill your focus. If you are, let's say you're like, I'm going to sit down and write these emails, or I'm going to sit down and create this content. If you're in survival mode, so your body believes a bear is chasing you, the last thing you want to do is sit still and be creative, right? In fact, you don't even have access to that part of your brain when you are in dysregulation. So everything from focus to getting stuff done is profoundly harder in dysregulation. Sales, so hard when you are dysregulated because now you also have to bring in one of the most triggering conversations in today's day and age, and that's money, right? Money is super dysregulating for people. We need it, but then there's a ton of judgment for having it in today's society, right? People want to make more of it. They want to be able to have the freedoms that having it affords them, but then they have their own money wounds and trauma and baggage and whatever around it, right? Now, the other thing is our heart doesn't just pump blood, it also sends out vibrations and it receives vibrations. And I know that that sounds super woo woo, but there's actually been scientific studies done on that. We can do a whole other like podcast
We can do
episode
a
on
full
that.
episode on that one. Yeah.
Yes. But there have actually been scientific studies done on that. If
Yeah.
I'm in survival mode, my heart is going to be sending out micro vibrations that I'm not safe, that I don't feel safe. Your heart, let's say you're the prospect and I'm on a call with you, your heart is going to pick up on that vibration. So now all you're going to feel is this incongruence in your body where you know how some people are like, oh, this just doesn't feel right, right? It doesn't, I don't know if
Yeah.
this feels right to sign up for right now. That's why, because you don't feel safe because you are dysregulated. And so for me personally, as somebody who hated sales conversations, who used to like, if you watch my old workshops when I first started and I was super dysregulated compared to
Go
now,
look at some of our old YouTube videos.
yeah,
They're
my
funny.
content, right? My content, you could pick up that I was dysregulated and uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Now I do these sales conversations on a daily basis and I have no problem, right? I used to struggle
Yeah.
to ask people to pay me $100, and now I have people paying me $5,000 a month, and I have no problem with that because I regulated my nervous system. I expanded my nervous system to feel safe with money.
Well, I think, I come from sales, so like I was in sales for a long time. It's a big part of what I did, like through my 20s, especially like I was in different sales jobs, mainly around, software and stuff like that, which is a completely different animal when you're selling a tangible item versus I always sold intangible items. So again, that adds another layer of complexity to it. But one thing we would always talk about in sales and any type of like sales training that I ever went through is they would just use the word energy, right? Like, your energy has to connect with the prospect. Now, I know you're going in like deep science here, but at the end of the day, like if our energy is not in connection or our energy is not, again, I don't want to sound woo-woo, but if our energy is not in flow or natural flow, with if we're fighting against kind of like what we're like we sit in this reality, so like we're kind of like fighting against the natural like things that we what I mean, like the if the energy's
Mhm.
off, people are going to feel that. And like a lot
Yeah.
of times I know, like especially in the early on in my sales career, it was like, what am I doing wrong? Well, it was me, and I never wanted to admit that it was me, but it was me. And it really didn't change, and this is well before I met you, but it really didn't change until a lot of times like I got my emotions were better and my confidence was there and my self-esteem was there and I believed that I was able to do it and I saw myself being able to do it. I didn't know anything about the nervous system. I didn't know anything about the science behind it, but I did know that you kind of get into that zone in sales and or in business and entrepreneurship as well. You kind of get into that zone and everything seems to be easier. And I think like we're all chasing after that zone because when we're in that zone, like making money is easier. Everything we're doing, all the decision making, all the content, all the things you have to do just as a business owner just seems easier. Whereas like when you're having those bad days, it's like everything seems impossible. So I think like it's interesting that you bring that up because that's kind of the scientific part of it, but just letting you know and letting our listeners and our viewers know here that, like for me, it was always just tied to like you might have heard like your energy has to be right. Well, this is kind of what Tiff's talking about here, but she's taking it a step deeper and going into the science behind that energy. Now, since we're talking about energy here, I'm curious. Obviously, like we look at, having that energy is the word that we're going to use is going to be regulated, specifically when it comes to your nervous system. So, like, obviously, I was the first for me to hear from you was like, okay, so you have to have a regulated nervous system. I was like, I don't know what regulated means. I'm just a simple kid from Eastern Kentucky. I have no idea. So I'm curious, like, what is the difference between, when it comes to like entrepreneurs specifically, like, what are regulated entrepreneurs doing differently? Like, what are the behaviors that you're going to find with regulated entrepreneurs versus people who are dysregulated? And, what are some signs that they might be that you might be able to notice or like they might be able to catch doing themselves if they're regulated versus dysregulated?
Yeah. So I would say the biggest difference is that regulated entrepreneurs fight themselves less.
Mhm.
So I know I said to you a couple years ago before I really started regulating and making that a daily practice, I would say things like, "Well, I'm really good at starting things, but I just suck at finishing." Right? I'm a non-finisher. So I can get things started no problem. I can launch, but finishing things out not so great, right? But that was actually my dysregulation because your nervous system's number one goal is to keep you safe.
Mhm.
And so it wants to keep you in familiar situations. And so the reason I couldn't finish is because that would bring a level of success that I had never been at before. Right? So the regulated entrepreneur is going to be far more creative because when you're in your survival mode system, you're dysregulated, you're in your emotional brain. Creativity sits in your logical brain, right? So you're going to be better at problem solving as a
Man,
regulated,
you're in full grown nerd today.
yeah, you're going to be a better problem solver, more innovative as a regulated entrepreneur. You're going to have more time because there's a ton of productivity and time management apps, and those are designed for the dysregulated
I've
entrepreneur
downloaded every single one of them, and I can
because
tell
a
you I haven't
regulated
done a single one.
right, because you feel safest in self-sabotage and poor time management is a dysregulated entrepreneur's self-sabotage dream, right? Procrastination is the dysregulated entrepreneur. The regulated entrepreneur is able to say, here are the things that I can delegate, right? The dysregulated entrepreneur is like, it's not safe for me to give this to anybody else. It's not safe for me to delegate. It's not safe for me to automate. It's also not safe for me to stop doing the things that are no longer working, right? I talk to people all the time and they're like, well, I'm just going to keep going with this one strategy that I've done 100 times and it hasn't worked yet, but one day it's going to, right? And I'm
The
like,
definition of insanity.
yeah, exactly. But what if we looked at your strategy and we asked, how can we make it better, right?
Yeah.
The dysregulated entrepreneur doesn't feel safe to ask that question because now their worthiness and blah 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 comes into play. So the regulated entrepreneur doesn't get caught up in the busyness of things that don't move the needle. They're able to look at the to-do list and say, delegate, 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 automate, automate, automate.
Mhm.
And these are the things that move the needle. So those are the things I'm going to do. You would not find a regulated entrepreneur doing something that wastes their time. So they're not going to say, for
Mhm.
example, sit on the phone with the phone company for an hour over a $5 overcharge on their bill because they know their time is worth more than that, right?
Oh my gosh, dude, I got some stories in my family about that one.
So they're able to let go of those what we call minimum wage activities, right?
Well,
So
you know,
those are
isn't
the
it
biggest
interesting though?
differences.
Isn't it interesting though? Like at least I know when I started getting regulated, like I used to try to think my way through a lot of things, and that obviously took energy and time. But I know I've noticed like once I've started doing like the nervous system reset, obviously like the 7 exercises that you give away in our community, which you're interested in joining that community and getting our 7 day, our 7 nervous system reset exercises to regulate your nervous system and take back control of your emotions, and become a regulated entrepreneur. You can just go down there below. We have a link that will take you directly to those, instantly unlock those seven exercises in that specific program, which we've given thousands of people. Go ahead and go down there and join that now. But I've noticed that like when you get regulated, like you don't think, right? It's almost kind of like you just intuitively know. And I've noticed that, like, when I've been, when you get around entrepreneurs that are really making moves, entrepreneurs that are really like, doing doing big things, or have a lot of momentum, there's not a lot of thinking. There's just a lot of doing. And I think I actually just recently posted around, something that, it doesn't matter kind of what, if I'm going through procrastination, I'm going through anxiety, I'm going through self-sabotage, I'm going through depression, whatever it is, the first step that I've always found in getting out of that is, just kind of coming from a layman's terms person here, is cut the science out for a second. Is just imperfect action, just doing, right? Like not thinking my way out of something and just doing, and understanding that like the act of just doing is usually going to get you where you want to go. Because even if you're making mistakes, which you're going to make mistakes either way, even if you're making mistakes, the doing is just going to usually get you there a lot faster. So that imperfect action, I think, is something that's a lot easier when you're regulated. Now, obviously, we're going to have some listeners, some people who are watching this who are going to be like, hey, like, okay, I empathized with some of the things Tiffany said. I procrastinate. I self-sabotage. I got past trauma. I got these things that I'm going to blame for being dysregulated. Okay, you're dysregulated. Maybe you think you're not as regulated as you could be. Maybe you're stuck. Whatever that is, when it comes to making more money, increasing your income, like whatever that is, I'm curious. I know we have the nervous system reset, and those are just phenomenal 7 exercises, and obviously you can go and grab those down there below. But what were some like daily practices? Like maybe things like what were some daily practices, whether it came to like body, breath work, like setting boundaries, whatever it is, like, what were some daily practices that you would give, to our listeners here? What would be some of those that people could do, kind of like right now today, that are super simple, that could help them start to regulate their nervous system and start to create a routine around just regulating your nervous systems, aka equal taking back control of their emotions and getting out of self-sabotage or procrastination or whatever they're stuck in.
So definitely it needs to start with our 7 day nervous system reset. And the link for that is cyclebreakersociety.com. It's also in the description and the show notes. Do each of those exercises one time. Now, I
Yeah.
know 7 seems like a lot, especially when you're already stressed out and dysregulated. It's like, I have to add 7 more exercises. But three or four of those exercises are breathing exercises. So you don't have to do them all every single day, but we give you some options because some people like extra, you like a specific breathing exercise that's different to what I like.
Yeah, I mean,
So
I do
try
the
each,
easy exercise and box breathing. I don't even think you do those. I think you do two completely different ones, but they all equal the same thing.
yeah. So do the exercises one time at least, each one, and then you're going to choose the ones that you like the most. Now, you really only need 10 minutes a day to get this started, right? To start recalibrating your nervous system. And it doesn't have to be 10 minutes all at once. I like to do 5 minutes in the morning and 5 minutes at night. Okay. If there's a day where you're super dysregulated and you're struggling or whatever, yes, you can do more. Absolutely.
Mhm.
But as a bare minimum, 10 minutes a day is great.
Yeah.
Okay. From there, once you start doing those exercises, then I would say the biggest thing is starting to ask yourself, what is the most important thing for me to complete today for me to hit my goal? Right. And you're going to start getting that clarity is going to be so much easier when you get regulated as well, because that then helps you plan your day around what are the most important things. You can also look at the different areas of your life. So for me personally, I break it down into family, I break it into marriage, which I know family fits into that, but our relationship, the three of us with our son versus our relationship as a marriage, different, right? Health and
Mhm.
fitness, spiritual, and then business and finances. So I break my life into those five areas. And
Yeah.
so every day I say to myself, what is the most important thing for me to do in family to achieve my goal? And so I make sure that every night or every day, depending on the day, right, that we spend some time together as a family playing and having fun.
Mhm.
What is the most important thing for me to do today for my marriage? So every morning when you get up, I stop, I make sure, give you a good morning kiss, give you a hug, have that connection, same before bed as a minimum.
Mhm.
Same with my health and fitness, same with my spiritual, same with business and income, right?
Yeah.
Those questions are going to become a lot easier, but it's also going to help you build momentum faster. So after you start regulating yourself, so 7 day nervous system reset exercises first, go to cyclebreakersociety.com. You'll be able to get those exercises. And then adding in that question will be a game changer for most entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that, we find ourselves doing, I know when I first started, like with you, and we went over, like, okay, let's break our life into like these pillars. And I think like when first started doing that, I started getting a lot more clarity because at the end of the day, before I was just like, make more money, make more money, make more money, but I wasn't taking care of my health. I wasn't taking care of any relationships, and my relationships were absolutely god awful in every aspect of my life. And I was just kind of in this gotta make more money, gotta make more money, gotta make more money. And that was tied to some past trauma that I had growing up. But still, like that was kind of always the thing. So I think something that you mentioned there that I would just kind of re-emphasize for everybody that's listening is again, like, you can kind of see it here behind me. My thumb's pointing to it. It's a little blurry because of the camera. But we have something that we call our legacy board. And at the top of our legacy board, which is basically us planning out our entire year with our goals and specifically what we're going to do to reach them. Um, you know, at the top of that, it goes over like literally it's those five segments or those five pillars. And then by those, we have like a big goal for each one of those. And then when we go through our legacy board month by month, we're literally hitting all five of those. And we're like, how are we going to do this? How are we going to do this? How are we going to do this? And like on that legacy board, if you were to look at ours, it's literally like, this is, date nights with you, family time. That family time might be broken up into hikes or whatever it is. So it's really interesting because when I was able to organize my life that way, it became a lot easier to regulate and became a lot easier to feel better because I felt a lot more organized. And organized has always been a catalyst for me to feel more in control. And when I felt more in control, it became a lot easier for me to take action, especially imperfect action. And a lot of things like fear, procrastination kind of went away. We've mentioned it a couple of times in this show. We gave you, we kind of went over why your nervous system's tied to your business and ultimately why it's really the biggest part of your business. If you have a dysregulated nervous system, I would honestly say you're screwed. But We went over it a couple of times throughout the show. But again, the biggest thing when it comes to regulating your nervous system is to go down there and get our nervous system reset. It's 7 exercises along with some training on how to organize these 7 exercises into a daily routine that will take like Tiffany said, 5 to 10 minutes. Super simple, super easy. We've taken thousands of people through these exercises, helped them bid out their routine. Every single one of our, over 100 people right now that are working with us, do this on a daily basis. It helps them. It is the foundational piece to breaking through your self-sabotage and increasing your income, no matter where your self-sabotage comes from. So again, you can go down there, you can grab those 7. It's a program we've put together inside of our community. It's a module in there that's absolutely free. It instantly unlocks for you when you join the community. So just go down there, join us in the Cycle Breaker Society community. The link down there is below, or go to cyclebreakersociety.com. And that'll take you to where you can join the community as well. So thanks so much for listening to this episode. We're super excited that you came here today, and we got many more coming from you real soon. So anyway, thanks for visiting me and Tiffany, and we'll talk to you in the next episode.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of The Cycle Breakers. This channel is dedicated to giving you the tools that you need to clear out the blocks holding you back so you can live the life that you desire. Now, before you go, as our special gift to you, we have our 7-day nervous system reset. These are the exact exercises that I give all of our clients in every single one of our programs to help them regulate their nervous system, to make that inner work and clearing out those mental blocks so much easier. The best part, it's absolutely free. Just click on the link in the description below and you'll get instant access.